It is day 52 of US and Israel's illegal and illegitimate invasion and attack on Iran, war which has already cost about more than 4,000 lives in Iran, and and US and Israel have perpetuated many war crimes in it. In the last 52 days, we haven't had much direct eyewitness account from what happened on the ground in Iran, and of course, mainstream media in the West framed it in a very specific way. Today, I'm really glad that we have Dr. Helyeh Doutaghi, research fellow from Tehran University, who has been on the ground both in Tehran and also in Minab, having interviewed the families of the deceased children, and also Helyeh Doutaghi possibly from her activities back in the United States, because she was expelled from Yale University last year due to her involvement in Palestinian encampment. Hopefully in the next hour we're going to talk about what's happening on the ground in Iran and how Iranian resistance is responding to this imperialistic war and invasion. Hi, Dr. Doutaghi. Thanks a lot for being with me and with Jadal audience today, and it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Ali John. It's a pleasure as always.
So it's quite surprising to have this conversation, because I believe last time we had the conversation, you were still in United States as someone who had just graduated from her PhD in international law. You were working on the crimes of U.S. sanctions on Iranian people, of course, alongside other countries who were subject to sanction, and you were fighting against Israel's devastation and genocide in Gaza. Did you ever think that one day you're going to talk and you're going to protest against Israel's crimes and American crimes in Iran?
I always hoped I would, but perhaps the racist fascism that unleashed in the United States facilitated the timing and the process of me relocating. And in retrospect, it was such an important time for me personally and otherwise to be here during this war. So I'm really glad that I was able to experience it firsthand and be here and be with my people.
So for those who might not know, and sorry, I did because I do 4 or 5 hours of streaming in Farsi every day, so my introduction might have been a bit full of a stutter and a bit incomplete. But for those who don't know you possibly, can you tell us what happened last year and how were you expelled from Yale?
Sure. So I was... I've been involved in a student movement, in anti-war movement, in Palestinian liberation movement over the past decade, both across Turtle Island, from so-called Canada to the US. And during my studies as a PhD student, I was very active and I was very involved in a student movement in Canada. And I also was part of, because of the work that I was doing in my research in terms of the sanctions regime on Iran. And beyond that, I also co-chaired an International People's Tribunal on U.S. imperialism in the form of sanctions, where we looked into 15 countries that are the target of U.S. sanctions regime. And so my work has not been contained within the classroom. I've always tried to practice what I teach and what I learn and what I write, which meant, I couldn't not afford to be silent about what was happening in the world. And so after I graduated my PhD, I went to Yale as the deputy director of the Law and Political Economy Project, which claimed to be the center that was going to push, left politics, quote unquote, into legal academy of the U.S. And I was also a research faculty at the law school. And for less than 2 years, I was there, and I was expelled from my positions because of my positions on Palestine, because of my involvement in Palestinian liberation campaigns. And I went back to Canada for a while after that, but eventually decided that I would like to return to Iran, because I thought it was, and this was during when I made the decision to move. It was during the 12-day war. I was in Canada at the time, and I was, I thought to myself that we know this is going to be a continued struggle until the liberation and decolonization of the region. And Iran is going to be at the center, at the heart of it. And it was important for me not to politically be where I was, but to, I think, physically and geography also was important. And the past 50 days really proved to myself that that was the right decision.
So you didn't fight back what happened with Yale, because that was outrageous, and I think it was illegal as well. And you had a chance of taking them to court. You had a chance if you wanted to fight it back, because even as New York Times says, they suspended you after AI-powered news site accused you of terrorist link.
Yeah, what was very significant about what happened was that, top Yale Law School in the country lacked any due process, lacked any evidentiary base for the claim, for the accusations, and because they could not prove any of the accusations that were being made, including the terrorist link. What they fired me, the reasoning that they offered for firing me was the fact that I did not collaborate with their process. And the reason that I did not collaborate with them was because they hired an external legal firm which publicly worked with Zion and represented Israeli companies and worked with Zionists. And it was public on their website that they represent both weapons manufacturers and also entities related to the Zionist entity. So I refused to sit down with that lawyer because they were fundamentally unable to investigate without bias. And I asked for a new representative, and they refused to provide that. So I refused to collaborate with them on that basis.
So it's a question actually interesting for myself, because I've been talking about fighting against imperialism and resistance, but from far away, from distance. What has been your experience in the last year? Because you managed to witness two wars, the 12 Days War and now the first part of this war, which may, at any moment that we are talking, the ceasefire may break or not, we don't know. But you already have had two experiences of war. How different was experiencing it from reading about it and protesting about it from far away?
I wasn't in Iran during the 12-day war, so I also followed, like yourself, from a distance. And the difference, and I was here.
You were here for the 12-day. Okay, so you had one war. You watched it from distance, and this one is the first experience that you had. Okay,
that is correct. So I think how I would compare the two is, there are different ways I can talk about it. On a personal level, I was, and this might not make sense to many, but I was way more anxious and terrified as I was outside during the 12-day war. It was very hard for me to follow the news, to operate, on a daily basis, and to just witness the atrocities and the sheer brutality that was being unleashed against Iran. So it was very difficult, and that was the turning point for me when I decided, on a personal level, when I decided that I don't want to experience this, so I'm going to return to Iran. But this time, believe it or not, it's been a beautiful, it's been a very reaffirming and experience living in Iran. As you know, I've had very close explosions as I was in the streets or my home. You would wake up every day knowing that you might die, but being with the people, actually experiencing how unafraid they are and how committed they are to the struggle for liberation of the region from U.S. and Zionist colonial and imperial occupation. It was very empowering and inspiring for me to live for the past 50 days in Iran. And it also made me go on.
But you arrived. When did you go back to Iran exactly?
Oh, about 8 months ago now.
So you'd also witnessed the episode back in January, which was like a episode of hybrid warfare in which we saw transformation of part of Iranian society. I mean, we say hybrid warfare, but nonetheless, it was effective in terms of affecting and putting impact on the consciousness of a part of the Iranian populace. So you experienced that one as well. So going from there to here, tell us what you saw and what you experienced.
Oh, I did. I lived. This is the first. I remember tweeting the first impression that I had from January before anyone was talking about what just happened. I very much believed from day one that we were going through a coup, and now we know that's exactly what was happening. And there were also Iranian scholars, who compared the Mossadegh's coup and the January coup as well, and the similarities of the tactics that were used by the U.S. Zionist forces to that of Mossadegh's coup. The level of violence that was unleashed by the Zionist agents and Mossad agents, and how unapologetically they claimed it, right? This is not something even Iranian accounts or Iranian authorities are saying. We know that both U.S. and Israeli authorities claimed that their agents they owned it. They owned their agents operating inside the country. But I think as an Iranian and certainly someone that's been, I've been critically following the political economy of Iran, it was also very evident that a lot of economic decisions that were being made at the time about the currency, about the exchange rates, about the dollar economy by the government. It's certainly coup, and as Ayatollah Khamenei also reinforced, coup requires that you have internal elements within the system that is working with the outside imperialist forces. And I've been very critical and loud about that, although I don't think, during a war, and especially to an English-speaking audience, is necessarily the right time or space to cover it. But I witnessed how both the internal extension of the Zionist policies and the sharp contradiction, because Iran and the Iranian Revolution stands on the anti-imperialist principles ever since its birth in 79. And at some point, the internal economic contradiction that you are enforcing a lot of IMF prescriptions of economic policies, of neoliberal policies that are designed and are conducted to de-develop and to de-industrialize global South countries. When you enforce that, and then you have an anti-imperialist foreign policy, at some point the contradiction is just going to sharpen. And I think January was a moment of sharpening, a very sharp contradiction of that exploded to some level. And if you think about it, the coup, and as you said at the beginning, the war this war of aggression had about 4,000. I don't have the exact numbers. Over 40 days, and the coup took over 3,000 lives of ours. This is how much damage they were able to inflict upon us, and the lives and the beautiful lives that were taken from us during that 2 violent days that were inflicted by U.S. Zionist forces. So yeah, it was important. It was very disheartening, and it was very enraging for me to witness that, especially because I was also closely following what was happening in the labor movement in Iran right before the coup, which was the largest labor protest that took place in Iran. Over 15,000 workers in South Pars and their union and their representative that uphold really principled anti-imperialist policy in terms of not allowing their voices to be hijacked. I saw firsthand how the U.S. attempted to hijack their voices. We have from BBC Farsi to Iran International to Foreign Ministry of the United States. They all tried to hijack it by trying to claim it and say, oh, brave workers. Yes. And I wrote about it. I wrote an article about it as well. And I witnessed how different the relationship of these workers is with the police than what we were being told. Because and I experienced it firsthand in the West, the police is inherently a violent institution. And I saw how different that is, and the relationship and the understanding of police as an institution towards the workers and their proximity to the police. And I explained that here a little, and how it is Eurocentric to enforce those frameworks and those understandings of the police in a context such as Iran. And the labor movement really is the sovereigns of the country. And so seeing how the United States was unable to hijack and turn that into a coup, and they tried, and they were refused. If you go down, you will see Ali Reza Mirafari's tweet that there you go, where he says,
as one of the organizers of the protest, I should say, because USA in Farsi says more than 5,000 South Pars workers in Asaluye, they've done one of the biggest protests in the recent years under massive security pressure and threats from the Islamic regime, and they asked for more fair salary. These workers stayed with bravery in front of against the oppression, etc. And then Ali Reza Mirafari, he says, as one of the organizers of this protest, I should say, first, the concept of the term of regime suits the savage state of United States much more than a state which has come out of a popular revolution. Second, we do not need any of your you cannibals help. Don't usurp our voice.
What he enforced here was the complete protection of their protest, recognizing that sovereignty and Iranian sovereignty is the precondition for any struggle that they're advancing, and their commitment to the revolution and the principles of the revolution. So I saw that firsthand because I was there as an observer as well. And to write that article, I talked to women, I talked to people who were present. And so that was a very, very important experience for me as it was early on, as I had returned to the country. And then I realized I saw how they refused to be hijacked and co-opted. And then a few weeks later, we saw how the unorganized protests in the streets with legitimate grievances, because they were unorganized, because they lacked union or representatives the way that South Pars does, they were easily hijacked, and they were easily infiltrated, and they were easily co-opted and turned into such violent atrocity that the US and Zionists inflicted, and many lives were taken from us because of that 2 days. And then I think I saw the Korean War, and we didn't even discuss the 12-day war because there's just so much happening in our country right now.
This is the journey. I mean, you came, I think it's like a roller coaster, because you came from the 7th of October encampment and losing your position in the university that many people dream to be there, and you said whatever, and then you left the United States, then you came to Iran, and then you witnessed the biggest kind of labor protest in the last 15 years. From there, a week later, you saw that unorganized riots with economic grievances, and how it became co-opted by Mossad and became part of the street kind of war, attempting and gearing towards civil war with 3,200 kind of death toll, unbelievable, in 24 hours. And from there, you experience this time of confusion in Iran, because from 8th and 9th of January up until even a few days after the war had started, it was a lot of confusion among ordinary people, because they didn't know how to interpret. They didn't know how to, which narrative to believe, because I think the narrative of the United States and Israel was quite well manufactured in order to cover over the reality. And that's how actually these hybrid warfares act, because they create a hyper reality and they overexpose on the actual thing. And from a normal citizen's point of view, sometimes it's impossible to understand which one is more real. So you experience
and that is
as well.
The design of it. That is the design of it, to impose. There are two things: to create political confusion in a way that people are not able to understand. People are unable to have clarity on what's happening, and to produce ignorance in a way. So ignorance, not understanding ignorance as lack of knowledge, but as a production of consent, right? Manufacturing consent to then advance the imperialist agendas in the region. And I think it was to a very high degree was successful. The hype that was very successful. The society, you could say, was really divided in a sense that, and when I say divided, I never cease to see love in this society. People continue, despite, within my own family. I have aunties and uncles and cousins who just completely disagree with me politically, and yet the love and the care and the relationship is never damaged. At least that's been what I've seen around in my community. But yeah, it was designed to really divide and conquer. That's their textbook imperialist playbook. And it really facilitated, and all those friends in the left who were also taking imperialist talking points during the coup in January, they are all complicit in every single bomb that was dropped, in every blood that was shed, and in every life that was taken from us over the past 40 days during the war. What that really tried to do is that to betray those who defend your sovereignty. That's what the occupiers and the colonialists always try to make people believe, that you betray those who are protecting your sovereignty, and we're going to sell you the dream of Dubai. We're going to sell you the dream of development. We're going to sell you the dream of, and what happened in the war since the beginning of this latest phase of the U.S. Zionist war of aggression is, again, people waking up to the reality that there is no advancing any internal struggle without sovereignty. And the fact that, all the propaganda about Ayatollah Khamenei was completely dismantled through the way that he was martyred, through the way with his entire family. The propaganda over the years that, the leaders, and this is what we see in monarchies, in fascist, European countries, where people always bear the most cost and the violence. But we saw here in Iran that it is the supreme leader at the forefront with his entire family, and then the leaders, the military commanders, and the political leaders that are at the forefront of giving their lives, often with their family members, sacrificing what they have to protect Iranian sovereignty. And that moment for a lot of people brought a lot of clarity and brought a lot of hope that realizing that protecting Iran's sovereignty is the precondition for any struggle that we want to advance internally.
That's really fascinating. I mean, even like in BBC, I'm sure they were very joyous about that because they really contributed into this. You are no longer my sister. Rows erupt as war divides Iranian families, and it's unbelievable because I always thought Israel's role in the region was to create divisions, to break down countries. Iraq into 3 small countries: Sunni, Shiite, and Kurds. Then they went for Syria. Now they are dividing Syria. They would love to divide Turkey. Turkish people already know that they're on them. In Iran, they helped to weaponize any form of ethnic fissure and fault line. But more importantly, they entered households. They divided households and families. So my own life, since Israelis became more active in Iran's politics in the last 5 years, I lost 7 cousins, 2 aunts, 1 uncle. It's unbelievable. People who were especially within the extended Iranian family, that you are part and parcel of each other, and it's really a strong relationship. They put us against each other with this endless media warfare, with this endless social media warfare, is even stronger. And so it's interesting that from there we went to this moment of clarity, as you said, and some of that was recovered. Not all of it. Still, I know people who are in the other camp. But you said something, I want to take that one first, and then we go to the war finally. You said that even members of the left, of socialists, anti-imperialists, they went along with American and Israeli propaganda line after January event. And that was quite a strength. People who called themselves socialists and anti-imperialists, they believed, they echoed, and they contributed to this war. Whereas it was obvious that coup was a preliminary episode, was a false flag operation as the opening of this theater, as the opening of this play that was needed for that. But I'm a bit how do you interpret it? Because I think if they had looked at other countries in the region, it was enough material for them to detect what was happening. Why did they lose it? Why didn't they detect it in time?
Oh, that's $1 billion question, and I have a lot of resentment to this. I don't know. I want to say, and this was also part of my reason that I decided to leave the West. I think there is something about the West's hegemony in a way that Westerns, as a political subject, they really don't have agency because of the power of media and corporate media that has taken over. In universities, in the second term, my last term at Yale, when I asked the organizers of the encampment at Yale, why did you stop the encampment? She straight up told me, because we're cowards. And I really appreciated the honesty. The way that they were repressed really stopped them from continuing to organize and go back to encampment. And I think, those our friends on the left, they're not immune from the propaganda. They're not immune because they reside in that geography, and that geography comes with the limitations. Those institutions, regardless of how much you studied decolonial theory, regardless of how much you taught, anti-imperialist scholarship in your classroom, because you are still present in the institutions that are invested in genocide, they come with that configuration, and that imposes a limit on you, whether you realize or recognize it or not. And so because of that, I think that's why it's important to at least, even if you live, because not everyone have the privilege of like leaving the West, because that's where they're from, but being in meaningful connection and meaningful engagement with scholarships and the knowledge of the South, what is produced in the South, recognizing it as a credible source of knowledge. And this was part of why I went to MENAP to begin with. We can get into it. Unless they do that, they can't break from that institutional limitations that is enforced upon them because of their geography. And I think, some of them are aware of it and many are not, unfortunately.
I thought kind of in Iran as well, I mean, because part of the left, I mean, the discourse comes from the West, but also the ghettoization imposed by sanctions and isolation actually adds to this as well, because I was like really surprised and sad how we haven't looked enough to the region, but also like these discourses create isolation and alienation, because many of the Iranians haven't been to Iraq. Hardly any of them have been to Libya. They haven't traveled to Syria. I mean, I've been to Iraq myself twice, etc. But many of these, especially the Iranian left, are kind of coming out of some form of discourses of modernity and are westernized. Yeah? The Iranian left have more tendency to be westernized than other forces as well. So the lack of familiarity with the region and the history of the imperial wars and invasions in the region and the isolation, only seeing the story through the prism of Iran versus the West, bypassing the region, not understanding. For me, I mean, that might be the reason that that knowledge was occluded to us.
This also makes me think about the the fascist Zionist Iranian diaspora, and the impact and how loud they are because of the media that is provided to them, and how much their voice is amplified in mainstream corporate media, and so I think part of that left is also influenced by the identity politics of the fascist Zionist Iranians that reside in those spaces that occupy those.
So did you manage to meet any of those? Because we have a lot of them. My wife had gone to West London the other day, and she came back and said, "There's like so much these like kind of monarchist flags. The whole that part is completely occupied in Ealing." Yeah? And I think that was apparently one of her colleagues in university was going to put the child in the nursery, and the nursery is monarchist nursery, a British nursery, but then it's like there's so much like monarchist flag everywhere. Yeah, so that's why if you live here, if you live in London, you live in LA, you see them all the time. But did you ever come face to face with the kind of this kind of fascist monarchists in Tehran?
Oh, in Tehran. No, I don't think the popular revolution is so present over the past 40 days in the streets that no, and because how diffused the Mossad agents were after the coup and during the war, it was the Mossad agents and the CIA agents that allowed these to come out and I guess inflict violence in the streets, and that was taken away during the war because of how people showed up to protect the sovereignty and protect the popular revolution. No, I didn't counter any of them.
So you never had a conversation with the Iranian monarchists inside Iran?
Oh, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of them, including, some from my family, embarrassingly so. But it's, I thought you meant on the streets.
Just on a daily basis, is coming face to face. Those who say Trump is helping Iranians, Reza Pahlavi is a kind of possible future of Iran.
What I'll tell you is this: it's either people I've met, or I've known to be a monarchist or regime changers. They've either over the past 40 days they've either changed their position in a way that they're like, oh, we were wrong, or they said, okay, no, now we realize that both the US and the Islamic Republic are bad. Like, those are the positions I've seen from these people.
Oh, so in a sense, it's very interesting because there was a big left conference in London back in February. Oh no, maybe earlier, and they were talking about the third wayism and the critique of campism. So it seems that the monarchists are going to meet the Marxists in the critique of campism and on the third wayism. So they say, okay, neither of them, no Islamic Republic, nor imperialism. Okay.
Yeah. At least they're starting to realize that bombs are not going to save them. That's been the blessing of this war. But they really don't represent the majority in a sense that it is amplified in diaspora. They exist. It's real. And so there's many other forms of opposition and critiques to the government. But monarchists are just really absent in the political conversations that you see.
I mean, I think that the use was, they were like, I'll say is like disposable. They were disposable for this war, being used for this war. Next episode, next hybrid warfare, they may use something else. They may come. So 2022, they used I'm not criticizing the legitimate grievances over feeling of gender inequality, but I'm saying that they rode over that and they created a perfect hybrid warfare on the back of a gender revolt or gender riot, because the first 3 or 4 days was just a riot, but then they turn into something else. This time they use Reza Pahlavi. Next time they may use something else, and so they
use Maryam Rajavi extensively, the MEK, in the Woman Life Freedom episode.
They use that as well, but also like they had Masih Ali-Nejad, they had different figures, Golshifteh Farahani, the actress in France, they had Ahmed Esmailion, the husband of one of those killed in the Ukrainian airplane crash, etc. But let's go to the last the 39 days of war, and suddenly we saw you
Arania Street, which has been targeted yesterday by U.S. Zionist forces. Where we are located, the target was the diplomatic police station right behind me, which will see complete destruction of the building. What we're also witnessing is the complete destruction of all the civilian buildings around. We have a school right behind the building, which has been partially destructed, and this building right next to it on the right, which has also been completely evacuated and destroyed. The structure is intact, but you can see the impact on the structure. The building in front of me, I'm not sure what's the building, but it's also completely structurally destructed as well. دوباره زدم.
دو زمانه بود دوباره دو زمان.
Was it one bomb or was it like
it was a double top.
That was a double top. So much devastation.
It was. So the point. So the first week of the attacks, and this is during the first week of the war, we were seeing the systematic targeting of police station, government institutions, including courts. And this was a diplomatic police station. And the reason that it was their first phase that failed, and it was to encourage riots and regime change operations for people to get a sense of, there is no policing, there is no institutions that is going to provide, the safety and within the streets. And so create the sense of encouraging people to come to the streets against the Islamic Republic. So that was part of this reporting, that it's not only that they're targeting the police stations, but the entire neighborhoods when as you're seeing the school behind that building, the in front of that building, all civilian buildings, and diplomatic police station is also considered civilian under international humanitarian law. But like it was war crime through and through with everything that they were targeting. They were pushing this narrative that we were targeting police stations in a sense that it's a military zone, but legally speaking, completely unlawful, because unless and until the place is used for military attacks against military targeting, or they're active combatants within that space, it's considered a war crime to target that space under international humanitarian law. And yeah, that's part of the reason I went there, to cover this specifically.
So that was like in line with the narrative. The narrative was in January, the state has has committed a massacre. We're coming to save them. We're coming to help them, and so everything becomes legitimate. This is not police station. This is like a organization which has been shooting the people. But none of this, you say, had any basis in the international law.
No, completely. Again, unless they're active combatants, or unless the place is a military of a military essence and nature, which neither were present in any police station. It's considered illegal to target that space under international humanitarian law. But you're right, as in that it was meant to, and we're beyond international law and international, and we can talk about it, but it was very much to serve the continued aggression since the 12-day war, and then the coup, and then this, because we're coming to save you. And that is the narrative they used for Afghanistan and, you know, women in Afghanistan. We're coming to save you. And that was what they were running with, and they thought it was going to work.
And what was the reaction? Because, I mean, people seeing not only like they're bombing the buildings, but they're taking away a layer of basic state infrastructure, which may lead to chaos, mayhem, and a form of civil war. Was it confusion? Was it fear? Was it like, what was the main feeling among the population that you were meeting at those times?
It was everything. It was all of it, because, you know, there is no one united, like people that experience or register war in the same account. There were people who were very scared. There were people who were very confused as to how to feel, because they were promised to feel saved and you know, freedom and all that. And they were saying they were seeing the devastation and how it's being manifested through US bombs. And there were people who were firm and had very clarity from day one. That's why they showed up in the streets about what is happening. This is an extension of the war and the genocide in Gaza. This is the extension of the colonial presence of the US in our region and the imperial violence in the form of sanctions, covert and overt operations, assassinations of our scientists, and so there were many people experiencing it differently. So I can, I think based on where they were politically and what is their awareness of where they are, they understood it differently and they felt differently.
So, and then from there, did you witness as a lawyer, as someone whose training has been international law, did you witness any kind of specific war crimes, something that Iran can take it to like other international criminal court?
Oh, a ton. I mean, almost the majority. It started with the killing of 155 school children in Minab.
We'll go to that later. We go to Minab. I'm asking about Tehran.
Majority of what I reported on and what I saw, not even majority, everything that I saw in Iran and I reported on was a war crime. It was civilian buildings, it was residential neighborhoods. I reported on universities. I went there, witnessed it firsthand. Where we're seeing is a residential area where the woman is explaining to me who the neighbors were and what they were doing. And she had a supermarket, and this is a working class neighborhood, I should add. And she was telling me how her supermarket was also destroyed, which was her only source of income. And at the end, I went there to report on the war crime and explain what happened. But it made me change my narrative, because at the end she said, none of this matters as long as the flag that we're seeing is still raised. They're asking me to leave the building because they close, and this is the only way I have access to internet. I apologize. But yeah, so it is everything I reported on, and I saw a mosque in Bazaar of Tehran. The Bazaar itself, a big portion of Bazaar was destructed. We've seen this in news as well. The Kakholistan and a lot of cultural sites of Iran have been damaged or partially destructed. Universities directly were targeted. Research centers in Shahid Beheshti University, in Sharif University, in various research and educational centers have been a target.
But that was not the only thing. I mean, because at the same time you were present in a lot of kind of nightly protests, yeah. And what was the feeling in those protests? Because that was something that I didn't expect. That we have every single night in every single city, town, sometimes villages, you have this like millions of people coming and holding the streets together. First of all, I mean, if you take us through that, why were there? What was important for them to be there? Was it kind of carnivalesque, or was it like a form of mourning? Was it out of fear of streets being usurped by the opposition? What was the story?
I think it started as because the memory of January was still very alive. I think it started with, we're going to defend and protect the revolution, and so we're going to be present to make sure that they don't unleash their agents to inflict more violence inside. So I think it was to begin with, it was protecting the revolution and the streets and keep them safe. But it evolved into a political side of expressing and demanding and making sure they hold to account the government. What I mean by that is, and we're seeing it right now, and right now I can hear them in central Tehran. What they started to voice demands. They started to refuse to end the war, short of full dignity and full assertion of sovereignty. They made sure that the critical accounts that were coming out from those gatherings in the streets and to this very night is making it very hard for the government itself, or the elements within the government who would want to agree to a ceasefire that the demands would be less than what the 10 conditions that the supreme leader has set. So I think it turned into a political side. It started with protecting the revolution, but it turned into a site where people were expressing demands, and beyond protecting the revolution, but demanding how it ends, how the war ends, what are the terms of the victory, and what are the terms of the negotiations that the government was going to hold.
So in a sense, now we go from like hybrid warfare, protests, and like a form of mental invasion of part of the populace. We go to the kind of proper military war, and then the base of the revolution is being re-energized. Yeah, and so you have because many people describe that as a massive social movement. Many of them described it as Islamic Revolution 2.0. Yeah, so Trump 2.0 brought Islamic Revolution 2.0, and those people suddenly became something. They became political subjects, really aware of their position, and there was a lot of dialogue between them and the military. So they were like negotiating with each other. They were having like a duet, saying that we want that part near Dimona to be bombed again, and then next day that would be delivered. And so you witnessed it as well. But anyway, from there you went to Minab, and I don't know how much time we have. If we have 5 minutes, we can quickly go through Minab, but otherwise we're going to keep this here, and then we're going to talk to you another time properly about the documentary that you made about Minab, and I have already uploaded on Jadal English. I recommend people to go and watch it. I can show them a little bit of it after you left. Yeah, I don't know whether you can explain a bit about this thing, or we can keep the whole thing for next time.
I think I can perhaps introduce it and then leave and then have the rest of, because I don't think we can do justice to Minab over a few minutes. What I'll leave you with is the fact that the documentary was the reason that I decided to go to Minab was born out of a responsibility to make sure that those who experience the colonial violence and the vicious assault on their lives are the primary narrators and those who have the agency and who are recognized as legitimate knowers of what happened. And I was especially angry because I saw English language reports, talking about, even in good faith, some of them upholding the United States, its military investigation, its institutions, as the legitimate source of knowledge, in a sense, as to what happened in Minab, or whether or not it was intentional or not. And I think it was very important for me personally to make sure that the voices that are recognized as the source of truth are the ones who lived it, are the ones who experienced this violence. I'll leave that with you, and then hopefully we can unpack this more in another session.
So I do recommend people to go and watch this, because I think the most important thing that you get from this video is actually takes us back to the very beginning, because apart from the normal devastation of a military action, given this is a sequence of a hybrid warfare, we had so much devastation in terms of emotional devastation, communal devastation, devastation of the family structures, family relationship, and a social devastation of different layers by injecting so much propaganda and so much narrative. And in a sense, in this 15 minutes, we see that the resistance to that comes actually from the family, comes from community, comes from love more than anything else. And I think that was interesting, that we are seeing the resistance to a hybrid warfare in a very interesting and very, very different way from the native resources of Iranian society and Iranian culture. And I think that was very important. And I think that was key in really keeping Iran together in the last 52 days. The platform is yours. Say what you want to say for the end, until we see you soon for the second part of our conversation about Minab.
Thank you very much, Alijan, for having me and for all the incredible work that you've been doing in the past 50 plus 4 years, I guess, that I've been following. So thank you, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks a lot for all of you to come and watch it, even though it was not advertised, to about 700 people who were with us. Please write in your comments what you think, and please go and watch that documentary about Minab. Until next time, goodbye, and hope to see you all soon. Here we go. Now I have to find my closing thing, and I cannot find it. So, okay, here we go. That's the final scene.